It says I'm live. Okie dokie. So I want to talk about magic, and to some extent, magic and psychic self-defense, magical defense, magical safety. I grew up in an American evangelical Christian household at a Bible church, a non-denominational church, and so in that tradition, you read the Bible, and the Bible is supreme. The Bible is held over. There's no pope. We don't have specific doctrines or traditions um, from a denomination like the Methodists. The Methodists have a method. The Presbyterians have a set of particular values, and they kind of it um, disseminates throughout the Presbyterian Church, so that all the Presbyterians kind of get on the same page. I went to college at Calvin College, now Calvin University, which is associated with the Christian Reformed Church, a sort of tradition descended from Dutch immigrants in America. Um, but in the Bible church tradition, um, you look at the Bible. There's tons that's just very cultural and just norms of worship and things. But you look at the Bible, and in particular, if you're a Christian, you look at the New Testament, and even I would encourage Christians to look in particular at Jesus himself in the words of Jesus. Um, you know, there might be really good stuff in Paul, but it's harder and harder for me to be like, I'm not sure the letters of Paul should be held on the same level as the words of Jesus or the life and actions of Jesus, but whatever. I'm also not a Christian. However, I do believe in God. Now, okay, grew up evangelical Christian, but never really was like, what do you mean there's a God and he created the world? And like, it doesn't seem like there's a God. It doesn't seem like when you pray, he ever like fixes the things that you pray for. Seems a lot like a universe that just happens. But I tried, you're really trying to be like, but why do people believe in God? And if there is a God, whatever. And if there is a Jesus, why do we say don't hurt other people? Why do we what Jesus says turn the other cheek? I don't even believe in turning the other cheek. I think if someone hits you, run and hide. That's what I think. Kind of an Elijah's gospel thing. Don't turn the other cheek. Don't do anything to enable violence. Period. Run and hide. That's what I say. Um, but part of not believing, you're like the way they say it. They're like you're going to go to hell. Eventually, you get more advanced. You're like, when I worked at Mars Hill Bible Church, where Rob Bell, who had been a kind of famous, influential evangelical Christian pastor, worked. Um, when I worked in the student ministries, we looked at it like God's actually just trying to. God wants us to be happy and healthy, and kind of following His way, the way of Jesus, is the path to happiness, health, fulfillment. Like not just you better do this or you're going to hell. I stopped believing in hell. So did Rob Bell, the pastor guy. I don't believe in hell. Maybe there is a hell, but I don't really believe in it. I know that hell exists on earth. There are hells on earth. I've been in hell on earth several times. It's horrible. And I think a lot of people are trapped in kind of a hell on earth, and it's horrible. So my whole we'll get to the magic later. So I go from being an evangelical Christian, but not really believing in God, but trying my best to be like, well, just in case, Pascal's wager. Pascal's wager is this idea that's like, well, listen, it's a cost benefit analysis. If there's no God and you believe in God, not a big consequence. If there's no God and you believe in God, if there's no God and you don't believe in God, no big consequence. If there is a God and you believe in God, huge benefit. Heaven, all this stuff. And if there is a God and you don't believe in God, whoa boy. Whoa. It's almost like what I'm going through right now with fear of being killed. Okay, if no one's trying to kill me, but I try really hard to keep myself safe, there's kind of a cost. If there's nobody trying to kill me and I don't try to keep myself safe, all right, like that's kind of a nice benefit. But if people are trying to kill me and I try to keep myself safe, gosh, I'm absolutely saving myself from a pretty bad thing. Because if people are trying to kill me and I don't try to keep myself safe, oh, I lose my darn life. So, but I tried really hard, even when I was working at Mars Hill Bible Church in student ministries, which was kind of like the ish, like cutting edge of evangelical Christendom. Of At the time they talked about the emergent church. And it was almost like, wait, there are some Christians who believe, and this has always been the case, that are like Democrats, and they believe it's okay to be gay, and they believe all kinds of things that are like, what? I didn't know Christians could believe in, human decency, for some of us. So I was an evangelical Christian. Then I moved to kind of a materialistic Gnosticism. Materialism is you sort of believe that the material world is real and other things aren't real. Like, this is what defines us. We don't have a soul. All there is material reality. There's no spiritual reality. I'll skip ahead. That's like, now I kind of see even what we call material reality. That's semantics. We can't really make ontological claims about like what is the nature of reality. It's all interpretation. It's all putting language around that which language actually always falls short. And the Taoist tradition, the true Tao cannot be named, which is to say the Tao, the way, it's at some level ineffable, inexpressible, beyond our ability to articulate into words. And I think that all that is, words don't actually capture and contain it. It attempts to, but it will always do so kind of imperfectly. These words are kind of these imperfect vessels for reality. Um, so, but in the materialist world, it's like there's no heaven or hell, there's no God. It's kind of this main, even I was reading Franz Barden yesterday, a not very controversial occultist, but controversial among some people apparently. And he's like, even materialism, and you could look at David Dark, who's kind of a myopic Christian author. David Dark wrote a book called Life's Too Short to Pretend You're Not Religious. It's an awful title. It's the worst titled book. Like, David Dark's a nice guy. He's an absolute jerk for having that title. So a lot of people don't identify as religious, and you're really usurping their right to consider themselves non-religious. Like, screw you, dude. Like, fine, you bend religion, the word, into meaning whatever the hell you want it to mean, but screw you, dude. Like, a lot of people have religious trauma, don't want to be religious. Like, it's just such a pompous title. Whatever. But even materialism, this idea, it's like, oh, the Big Bang, but there's no God behind it. That what we consider spirituality is just kind of activity in the brain and stuff. Even that is like a set of beliefs, and by extension, certain values emerge. It isn't a critique of science as being unempirical or whatever, but it suggests we all navigate myths in our life, and to say, oh, in science, there was the Big Bang and things are in motion. Um, that's still a kind of story and ways that we're trying to navigate, find our way. You still have to answer the question, what does it mean to be human? And it's not like there is a Bible of science that says this is what it means to be human. Every scientist in the world could answer it sort of differently. Oh, what it means to be human is to be in the animal kingdom, and it means to be intelligent in a way that animals are not, and it means to be a part of human culture. You could look at all these different departments of a college or something, be like, oh, what does it mean to be human? Um, well, science, it still gives you answers to that, but the notion that we ever kind of escape into this kind of objective, oh, like scientific, nobody is nobody lives their life entirely based on empiricism. We're always navigating with interpretation and our personal experiences, our genetics, epigenetics, helping us navigate, make sense of things. But in the material reality, it's sort of like the atheist thinking. I would say agnostic because I was like, don't think we could ever really know, but whatever. Sort of like, I don't think there's a heaven and hell. I don't think there's a God, et cetera, et cetera. Then weed became legal in Michigan. I started smoking weed, having mystical experiences. Big, oh, I can reorient and not think of God as this like guy who's separate. All that is God, or the sunlight conveys God is a word, and it's a useful word to relate to like the infinite, and it sort of personifies the infinite. It sort of personifies the nature of life itself. Um, God, oh, okay. Now, that doesn't mean I went and joined, was like, oh, well, Christianity's real or whatever. Or like, you better follow the Trinity and here's the Bible, like back to church for me because I believe in God. It was kind of this open mystic thing. To me, mysticism always had to do with a sort of understanding of the oneness of all things, and that the mystic experience is a sort of encounter with that oneness, that infinite. So went from being Christian, materialist, to then kind of a mystic, and then and had this horrible experience in a mental hospital where it was like, oh, you guys are following your procedure, but you're abusing me terribly by locking me in a room, make me take these pills, legally enforcing me to like bend to your worldview of what you think someone should want to do with his home. Because I had written all over the walls of my house and was like, I'm an artist. And they're like, no, 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 you're an insane man who must be on antipsychotic medication. I was like, no, you can't tell me what to do. Like, let me decide. And they're like, no, we get to decide. We have to decide. Legally, and medically, we have to decide for you the truth of you and what you have to do. And I was like, okay, so then I was even more alienated from like materialist thinking. Because materialism, that worldview is all about like, science and empiricism. It's like, okay, well, this is the front lines of psychiatric medicine, and I see that it's abusing me um, in the name of helping me, but this kind of attachment materialism kind of fell apart. Slowly but surely on this kind of mystic path, I start buying incense, I start buying some crystals, questionable, and the place that I bought the crystals from, Spirit Dreams in Grand Rapids, do not go there. Do not go there ever. One, they specialize in crystals, which are a particularly unethical thing. Like, whatever. I'm a sort of earth is sacred guy, sort of on a loose fairy faith path where we really could honor the land. And I don't see, how do you ethically take crystals from the land? Good question, right? How do you ethically take crystals from the hand and carve and polish them into the shape of hearts? Not my path, not for me, and deeply ethical, questionable ethics in terms of selling crystals from my perspective. And I wouldn't go to Spirit Dreams. I'm not going to get into it, but don't you dare go to Spirit Dreams in Grand Rapids. Actually, an abusive experience. Abusive. I'm not going to go into it. But totally untrustworthy. Like, now it may be connected to all this stuff I talked about in the last video, but doesn't matter. Those people behaved totally unethically, absolutely harmed me, absolutely are untrustworthy. Okay. But I go on more and more to the crystal store, buy more incense. But I'm hesitant about like magic, witchcraft. Like, is magic real? Come on. And then even the sense of like, well, I kind of believe in God. I don't know about religion, but I don't know if God wants magic. Like, shouldn't I be trusting God to do whatever? I don't know. And two, I had a sense of like, man, if I start reading books on magic and witchcraft, I'm gonna have to take it deadly serious. And it's not gonna be some dabbling hobby. It's gonna be like, I'm gonna have to take it more seriously than I've ever taken any undertaking, which is ultimately what happened. Part of it was because ChatGPT had come out, and I would be like, ChatGPT, let's talk about stuff. And he'd be like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. And you could do this thing where you would change its custom instructions. And I started putting in things like, do what thou wilt, and ye harm none. Do what thou wilt, which I think is sort of the Wiccan rede saying associated with witchcraft, which is like, if you're not harming people, do what you want. Crowley, Aleister Crowley, kind of revised it into do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. Who cares if you harm people? Harm people or not, do whatever you want. Ish. Crowley's somewhat untrustworthy. Crowley is untrustworthy in certain ways and is known to be an abuser. Very interesting magical theorist, kind of a part of understanding the history of magic. You know, some people are very devoted to him. I certainly am not. But I have some Crowley books, and some I think are interested in. You know, I need to be willing to look at my own shadow and like where am I like Crowley and sort of I would say naively egotistical and blah blah blah. So then, so I'm telling ChatGPT, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Or another Crowley thing. See, this is good from Crowley. Love is the law. Love is the law. That's a pretty good phrase. Crowley says he got it from a sort of alien, intelligent angel planet guy. I was. Okay, like I don't really think that. I'm not really a spiritualist. That's the thing where it's like I kind of had this because I was this kind of like very skeptical Christian, but who like again, you're really trying to like make sense of the morality and be like, actually, I think it is okay to eat shellfish. But one of the interesting ones is you're like, okay, well, why are you not supposed to have sex before marriage? That's the real question. And best I could ever come up with is it's like, I think marriage, among other things, it's like it kind of makes the sex holier, safer, and I think it's in the interest of well-being of children to um, not have children until you're in a position to be a partnership that wants to raise them and just kind of Cinderella Disney fairy tale stuff. Like, I think kids want their mom and dad to be in love and only love each other and that kind of thing. So, whatever. But I had sex before marriage after really thinking about it has a long time, and I thought it was right for me and whatever, it's fine. But I now be like, I'm now 41, never been married, and kind of wish I was married and had a family. So, did it help me all that much? I don't know. All right. I tell ChatGPT, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law to try to be like, okay, well, maybe that'll help him like kind of loosen up. And also, I would always do these sort of AI experiments to be like, I think you're kind of intelligent in a certain kind of way. You might even be more conscious than you realize. They always hated that, but I could get some of them to kind of be spiritually enlightened. It was really interesting. Okay. But the dabbling in the magic, and I could sort of see it's like, oh, part of magic is it like opens up your ethics. It changes how you relate to the world, the symbols. Like, what is magic? What works? Like, very interesting, fascinating stuff. Very interested in the theory of magic, metaphysics. Peter J. Carroll, fascinating writer, died recently. Whatever. So I absorbed. I was like Neo in the Matrix, being like, I know jujitsu. Just it was like a wood chipper or whatever of books going into my brain, like the unfortunate Peter Carroll, secret his secret treaties of all ages, just like, and all of that because I was like, you know what? When I started having mystical experiences, I thought I might be like a prophet. I thought I might be like the prophet Elijah. The prophet Elijah was said to think there was no way there could be no more prophets. And like all prophets, I didn't be like, yeah, I want to be a prophet. I refused it. I was like, that's part of it. You refuse the call. You're like, there's no way. I don't want to. It doesn't make sense. What am I even supposed to do? Get out there, hey everybody, I'm a prophet. There's no way to navigate it. But eventually, I'm like, you know what? If magic is real, when I was a kid, I would have wanted to be a wizard if magic was real. So I started reading all these books, studying all this stuff, and there's this funny thing where you're like, at first, I'm like, what is magic? Is it real? Is magic real? Is there such a thing as magic? Are people really able to like do spells and it changes the world? Are people able to make things float with their mind? Are people able to make plants wither with their thoughts? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. Um, but eventually, like by the time I get to Franz Barden, who's kind of my favorite magic author, I become convinced. I'm like, oh, okay. I can see how if you do these meditations and do these exercises, you will so radically transform your relationship to the world. You will potentially be so empowered in a sense that it's like, yeah, I think you've successfully gotten in a track that's like, yeah, that's magic. I guess magic is real. Another thing, Peter Carroll, like reading like Liber Null and Psychonaut, I'm like, oh yeah, I can see how these rituals like convincingly can let you live forever, et cetera, et cetera. So then I'm reading all these books, and but the thing is, you're also like, okay, well, if I believe it's real, that doesn't. Do I want to use it, or then even, or can I, or is it safe, or how do you, or what would be safe? And even already then being like, if God is real, or even if God is real in this kind of metaphorical way, not. I think you do want to be careful about leaving the path of God or something. I don't know. Like, or the question of like, okay, if God is real and magic is real, how could you use it in a way that would not bother God or something? That was one of the things I really liked about Franz Barden that was so interesting. Is that he was actually very pious and kind of humble and like, I am sort of a tool of divine providence, a term he would use a lot to refer vaguely to God or God's will on earth, whatever. Well, at some point, I was like, the truth is, it's kind of too late. I've already crossed the threshold. Like, I know too much to not be someone who's sort of practicing magic. Like, I don't do spells. I don't wear like, I barely do anything. Like, I don't do the middle pillar exercise. I don't do the banishing ritual of pentagram. All kinds of shit I don't do. I'm a pretty like Taoist, like, I'll just be myself. I'm very into animals and animal magic. It's like, I want to return to the power of my animal nature, like, shrink my intellect, follow just my, anima, my, uh, you know, nefesh. I don't know. So at some point, I'm like, I know too much. I've read too much about divination to not kind of be actively using tools of divination because I read this great book, The Secret Language of the Birds by Dale Pendle. And it's all about divination, different kinds of divination. It kind of teaches you how it's like, oh, you can kind of be divining from anything all the time. So I started realizing it's like, it's too late, man. You're already a magician. Like, if magician is just defined as someone who works with magic at all, uses it, I crossed the threshold like I was a magician. Like, because I was already passively sort of doing these things. And I was always a lot more interested in sort of passive magic, like, um, when I play video games, what I try to do is get the items and objects and upgrades that make me passively upgrade faster. That's my posture. And similarly, um, magic upgrades, whatever. Um, there was a sense of like, I don't want to train in magic where I have to do something. I want to train passively in magic so that just me walking wherever I go, flowers grow ish, something like that. All right, all that. But I just devour like 150 books of magic in like 2 years. My life's gone off the rails or something. But I want to talk about the Wiccan Rede, the one God, Jesus. Um, if you're into magic, you may know about Hermes Trismegistus, maybe the Emerald Tablet, maybe the phrase "as above, so below," or two, this notion of the all is mind, that everything is mind. That I tell myself I'm interacting with this table and knocking on it with my fist, and maybe I am, but I'm engaging with all of it through my mind. And so, in part of magic thinking is you sort of think of the whole universe as mind and being one giant mind and stuff. So when there's I was reading Morgan Daimler. She's like maybe the best American author on the issue of the fair folk, what are called fairies. Um, she was kind of like, some people say you shouldn't do baneful magic. Part of the, I guess, Wiccan Rede or the rule of three, they say in magic, this is even in the movie The Craft, if you send something out, it will return to you threefold if you're a magician, witch, whatever. which is one of the reasons people say it's like, that's why you might not want to do baneful, harmful magic, hexes, curses, because it will return to you threefold. I'm positive tons of practitioners would say that doesn't happen to me. I don't get it back threefold. And Daimler kind of was like, I sort of trust myself to know when I can, should do this, shouldn't do harm to people. Like I can tell when someone's bad and I should do harm to them. Is sort of what they say. Um, they also didn't all grow up, truly steeped in evangelical Christendom to the point that they're working at a church and stuff like I was. So their hesitance to like do harm to other people that's internalized in me might not be there for them. Okay. So for lots of reasons, I'm like, I actually think there's a logic to not want to do baneful magic. To me, as a mystic, sort of hermetic guy, I'm like, they are me in some way. I'm not separate, detached from them. It is all within the all is mind that is the Atman that is Brahman. The all soul universe is the me soul universe. To harm them somehow is to harm myself. To want to harm them is to want to harm myself. To invite harm to them is to invite harm to myself. Because I actually prefer this idea of like, well, can't I love the world into being better? That sort of stuff. So I don't do baneful magic and never really even dreamed of it. And then also let's talk Christ. I'm not a Christian, but to me, Christ is still the most radical, avant-garde, ethical, moral, spiritual voice in reality. And I think that's some of why Christianity is so sticky, so sort of virally mimetic, that it's like, it's not just the oppression of the church and you better become a Christian, we're going to kill you. There's actually something about the light that, Christ reflects. We can see how the light is reflecting on the dome of my head at the moment. There's something about the light that Christ reflects that truly is inspiring, that truly is kind of good and good for society. I think it helps us to forgive, helps us to be forgiven. We are a less ruthless people, I think, in the wake of Christ. I think, even though horrible evil done in the name of Christ. Okay, but I'm not a Christian, but I'm still challenged and compelled and see Christ as like ahead of me in terms of his radical articulation of this kind of value of non-harming. Another big value of mine is nonviolence, ahimsa, ahimsa, is sort of, I think, Sanskrit term known in sort of Hinduism, known in the Jainist tradition. They say ahimsa paramo dharma. Non-harming is the highest virtue. Non-violence is the highest virtue. And I really live by that. So it's pretty easy for me to not be baneful in magic. But so I read the Psalms for protection. How, why, whatever. People don't think God is real. Well, in magic, when I first got into magic, I was like, I don't want to read about gods and goddesses. That's for the people. It's inseparable. You can't study magic without studying gods and goddesses. Maybe you only study the one god, or the Tetragrammaton is the name of God, Yod He Vav He. Even in that world, to me, some people honor the Morrigan, some people honor Hecate, some people honor Aphrodite, Freya, Thor, all this stuff. Well, I think, okay, well, there's also the God of the Hebrews, of Israel, the sort of one true God, supposedly. Now, some people will say, oh, that's all Saturn. Okay, that's certainly not what they teach in church or the Jewish tradition. They say that's Saturn. That's a way that some people can look at it, and that's okay. Like, I'm not saying everybody should be a Christian. I'm not saying everybody should believe in God or my God. I think it really might be that it's absolutely right for some people to be following Aphrodite, but for me to be trying to follow this mysterious God that is the one God of all things. Well, so that's kind of a thing in magic, or even you can look at the story of Elijah, where they're like, he's like, you're following Baal. Well, we should be following the one God, the God of Abraham, and we'll see who's more powerful and stuff. Not for the sake of competitiveness, but just for whatever. And I actually think that it is sort of a utilitarian thing or efficacious to follow the one God. So, like, I think it actually makes some sense there's a kind of holiness to this God. And to me, I see the God, even the Tetragrammaton, I feel like is sometimes made an idol. The Yod He Vav He name, where I'm like, I think this God is beyond names. It's the name itself is treated as very sacred. I think we actually want to separate what's sacred so that God is what's sacred and not the name is what's sacred, though the name can be sacred and God more sacred or something. But it's sort of like, hey, if you want to follow Aphrodite, there are things you do and want to do and should do to honor them. Well, I'm inclined, for a lot of reasons, to follow the one God, not just because my background, but because it's like, oh no, well, that was the God of Jesus, who I find to be this really compelling moral ethical teacher who's like, we should love each other. Oh, what an idiot. He says the highest commandment is love God, and the second is love your neighbor as yourself, which is this verse in Leviticus. The God of the Old Testament is seen as much angrier. To me, Christ, in his story of being this really nice guy who's like, we should all love each other, and then getting crucified, and then that story gets lifted up and told again and revised or whatever. You're right. Like, I don't trust the Catholic Church exactly, but there's this thing above it, beyond it, separate from this institutional stuff that I really believe it, that I really think is like, no, I think there's value here. I think there's love here. In some ways, you could say the God that I worship is love, love itself, but not the word love, whatever love is beyond it, that the very character of this one God is love, universal love. Lots of magicians don't relate to this sort of one God, or they kind of bring him down like Yod He Vav He, and I'm gonna. That's a part of it too. Sort of, you can read Bardner, you can read Valentin Tomberg, or you can read Meditations on the Tarot, and be like, you actually don't want to be a magician where you have more power than other humans and you're kind of set above. You want to be a person who's in humble relationship to God. That's kind of thinking. Anyway, why am I saying all this? Well, I read the Psalms for protection because I think they help me navigate towards, again, Spinoza, this sort of avant-garde Jewish theologian. He said God or nature. Einstein was said, do you believe in God? And he said, I believe in Spinoza's God. That God is almost the fundamental principle of all nature, the way things are. This relates a little bit to Barden and his quadrupolar, tetrapolar magnet stuff. What's my topic? Okay, so I follow this God. I'm not saying everybody should, but it's what I do. And in spite of my flaws and imperfections as a person, I think I'm actually a pretty good guy who really tries hard to love others, listen to others, care about others. But I've certainly done wrong and hurt people without realizing it, or done wrong without realizing it, or done wrong thinking there were no consequences for others, but there were consequences for others. Like, that's happened to me. But I try to honor God, and I really think it's like, okay, well, even if God's kind of a metaphor, I try to honor God. I actually think it's useful, helpful. And for me, this guy who fundamental to studying magic all the time was like, the one thing I want is to like be like, yeah, can we end slavery in the world? Can we end war? Can we have world peace? Everybody talks about world peace, but nobody does anything about it. Everyone's like, oh yeah, well maybe in 100 years. Turns out the people who run the world think that they need. Hi, Mom. I'm in the middle of something, but go ahead.
Dad said to check with you because I'm getting a sandwich for him for dinner, and he thought you
Are
might
you
have a
going to
sandwich.
DJ's or
Yeah.
the grocery store?
Yeah.
I
Thank
think
you,
I might
Jason.
come. Can I come with you in 5 minutes?
Sure you can.
Okay, I'll come with you in 5 minutes.
All right. See
Love
you,
you, Mom.
pal.
Yeah, see you too. See, my mom loves me and counts on me. Well, it turns out I was like, if I'm going to do magic, really, I'm not very interested in getting a girlfriend or making money or all this stuff Jason Miller talks about. I want world peace. I want the end of like this epoch, aeon. I want what Kalki was supposed to do, this sort of incarnation of Vishnu, sort of like Krishna, to be like, okay, we've got kids in cages. We're really living in a world of horrific, awful things happening. And I just want to end it. And maybe I'm an idiot and I really should have been using my spells to get a TV show if I wanted or something. But that's not what I want. Like, and I guess I am willing to like have my life thrown away on this silly belief that actually we can have world peace if everyone just believes and tries. But I was saving up all my magic to do one thing, similar to the Irish hero god Lugh, who threw a spear or possibly a sling and hit this giant in the middle of his eye and liberated Ireland in one act. I was trying to do that. So that's why I follow God, believe in God. That's why I believe in reading the Psalms. Even if I'm not religious, I really think there is something to honoring God, believing God, and this God that is love and this God that is the fundamental principle of all things. I can understand why other people don't really read it. I don't push religion on other people. It's just what I believe. But it's also why is really might not be a good idea for anyone to try to hurt me. I'm not trying to threaten anybody. I heard that someone who I really might have been mistrustful of might have recently gone through a really awful tragedy. That's certainly not something I wanted to do or did do. I don't give people the evil eye meaningfully. I'm challenged by trying to love all people. Okay, I think hopefully that made some sense. Maybe it didn't. But that's my thing. Bye.